Hello, everyone, again. I am Heather, and I have Jared with me. We'll introduce ourselves in a second as our fake personas, actually. We are going to be talking building a pattern of life. We were talking about this last night, the speaker event. It's a topic that changes so quickly and is extremely relevant. So you are going to be seeing primarily iOS 14 and 15. So keep that in mind. Next year, maybe you'll see 16. As I said, I'm Heather. I am the Senior Director of Digital Intelligence at Celebrate. I'm also the SANS DFIR Curriculum Lead and Faculty Fellow. I represent Holly Michaels. So that's my picture up there, looking very similar to myself. So that's my character for this scenario that we built together. And as you can see on there, I like nice wine and bourbon. If you were around me last night, I also like tequila and vodka and all the things. Day of regrets.
And I am Jared Barnhart. I'm a digital intelligence specialist with Celebrate now, but previously I did 10.5 years in law enforcement. So I have sort of the investigative experience from that side to offer to some of these scenarios. I also love bourbon. And in our scenario that we set up, my name was Joey Blanton after the bourbons. So if anybody sees me later at the bar, Blanton's bourbon is a good thing. But I hope this talk will sort of point some of you to some of the ideas to drive investigations or data points that you can go search for, try to establish what someone was up to at a certain time and place and things like that.
And we chose our names. I have to clarify this just in case anyone Googles Holly Michaels. Not recommended. The Australians told me who she really is. We chose our initials and then went with names. So don't on your work computer look up Holly Michaels because the first hit is not going to be possibly who you just saw. All right, for our scenario, locations and pattern of life. What we wanted to do was individual activity. You'll see a lot of my stuff was when I traveled worldwide. I had an opportunity to go to Australia, to go to Israel, to do lots of things to test what the data looks like in different time zones, what the tools are parsing, what they're not. But we also wanted to show, can you tell when two people are at the same place at the same time and activities that were occurring? So were we in a vehicle at the same time? How many steps were we taking? Is there any health data associated with it? Can you put us at specific locations? And that's how we'll end this talk, is a day in the life, essentially, of two people and what it looks like. And Jared colorized it very nicely between pink and red, and you'll get to see Holly versus Joey and what it looks like. The artifacts are everywhere. We have found that a lot of stuff changed in iOS 14 and 15 compared to talks that we've done in the past. When I get to health, Sarah and I did a health presentation, DFIR Fit or Bust, a few years ago. And from there, I took some of that stuff, but also things change. So you have to really stay up to speed with anything that's changing with these iOS version updates.
All right. So the way this is going to go is we're going to sort of do an overview of some of the files. And so all of this is iOS. So hold the audience. Who are my iOS iPhone users? Very proud.
Is that Jess?
Okay. Sarah, was your hand up? Okay. And then the others, you raise your hands for me. So that Jess is avid for both. Yeah, so this is, of course, going to focus on iOS. So just stick with us for the Android users. But again, if you're in any type of role, whether it be using MDM to access devices on the corporate side or for law enforcement or investigations, these files are all iOS files, and we're just going to talk through some of them. Towards the end, then we'll build the scenario and sort of bring it all together for you. So the first file that I want to talk about here today is the cache.sqlite file. It's sort of like the golden file for iOS for all location things. So essentially, as you move, as you drive, as you do anything, the cache.sqlite file is interacting with the API with Apple and basically pulling in all of your locations. So all the applications that you install that ask for a permission, hey, can I have your location once while using, depending on the type of application that it is, will determine what level of accuracy the location it can record. All right, so as the applications and the native services need to know where the device is, it's being recorded in this cache file. It's about a rolling 7 days of data. So if you need to access this, you have to get it pretty quickly. But it's essentially breadcrumbs, especially if you're using GPS or something like that, to walk you from one point to the next. And some of the examples that we'll show, you'll see when it's awesome and then when it's not so great. But generally, this is a very reliable file. It's been around for years. Hopefully it remains as we move forward into 16, which I don't think we'll have a problem. But let me try to show some of the pieces of this. So what we did here is basically I took the cache.sqlite file, went in and grabbed out, ran a query to grab out some of the data points, and then basically just pressed play on those data points in a Google Earth sort of animation. So as this runs, basically just grabbed a period of time and queried out the results from this file. And we talk about this file very consistently, but to just watch it play. So here's basically me at home, and you'll see the screen sort of jump around a bit. And then you'll see when I leave and turn on GPS navigation. So as it jumps around a little bit, it's all over the place, not super helpful. There's not a lot of accuracy to these data points. They're sporadic, and then it goes, okay? So as you dig into this file and you need it for something in your environment, you can see here where I turn down this alley and stop, come back out. These sort of pauses are basically me stopping at red lights. You can see me pull over to the side of the road at a certain point if you zoom in, okay? And then I go for a drive. All right, jump on the interstate and go for a drive. And if this hurts your eyes, I'm sorry, but it gets us to a place, okay? So this is just using the cache.sqlite file, grabbing a specific point in time and saying, where was this device, okay? And as I get closer to the destination, you'll see where I slow down at traffic lights, get off the ramp, stop at some others, and eventually arrive at a destination, okay? It doesn't really get any better than this for location. All right, super useful. We're going to pivot from this place to some other things. But the next file that I want to talk about on this location piece is local.sqlite. Again, a native file that's been around for numerous versions of iOS now and is remaining consistent. You can see here at the bottom, it says 14.5.1 compared to iOS 15. So in your settings on iOS before 15, you could go in and you could see all of the significant locations. You could touch them. You could see when you were there, how many times you'd been there, all sorts of things, just manually looking at the device. When it upgraded to iOS 15, you can see that it still shows that there are records there, but it's not displaying them visibly for you anymore. All right. You will see recents. And I looked at mine this morning and it had a Chick-fil-A that I went to 2 days ago in my recents. So at some point, if it determines that recent place was significant, it will kick over to the actual significant record, or it might just purge if it determines that I was only there for 4 minutes. So maybe it's not significant, right? But local.sqlite is essentially recording all of the stuff that you see there on the left on the 14.5.1 example of how many times I've been at a place in a period of time, how long I was there. And some of the analytics that they're providing are saying that I arrived at this place via a 52-minute drive, whatever it might be, okay? So again, we have local.sqlite, that's sort of that constant moving location record. Cache.sqlite doing that. Local.sqlite recording the things that it determines are significant. And when you query these things out, and I just threw some up onto a map, I can confidently say that I absolutely was at each of the points on this map. Okay, so my significant locations are places that I definitely was at with my device, and we get entry and exit times to the data that's recorded here, also data point count, and then of course all the coordinates. Cloud or cloud-v2.sqlite for the newer versions is also feeding into significant locations data. You can see here that we have an expiration date. So think of the concept of as you get into your car and it tries to start your navigation for you, say, oh, are you headed home? And it wants to start your Apple Maps or whatever to navigate you there. All right, all these convenience features that we as users love, Apple's providing them for us. But if we dig in, we can see, all right, there's a place that I go, and maybe I go there consistently every Monday morning, but there's a place that I go consistently. At some point, if I stop going there, that place will expire. It's no longer significant to me. So if you lived at one place and then moved to another, there'll be an overlap during that exchange where you'll have old places that you're not currently going to, then they'll expire and you'll have a new set in your list. So now we're going to pivot from location-based artifacts to more granular movement stuff. So cache_encrypted_c.db. And again, there are other files that do this stuff. There's other health files that we don't even cover in great detail in this talk. that also do this. But I wanted to point out the cache encrypted C because it's a really interesting exchange from am I in a vehicle or not, and then counting steps. So you can see I wrote the query to be cute with a little emoji car to say I'm in a car or I'm not. But with the motion state history table in this database, it will tell me if the phone is vehicular or not. So is it moving in a vehicle or isn't it? If you look at the bottom where it has 4/8 of 22 at 1604, where it switches from vehicular to no, I can then look over to another table in the same database, step count history. And there you'll see that right after that 1604 time, I have what, 1604.25. So it starts to add steps. So at the point where I am no longer in a vehicle, I can then see me starting to take steps with the device, okay? So this database has about 10 days worth of data. So again, if cache was there and now has gone, you might not have that perfect location stuff, but you could potentially say that someone was in a car up until a certain second, minute, however granular you want to be, and then started taking steps. You could then transition into some of the other health artifacts to say, okay, how many steps? But then also here we have ascending and descending floors. So for me, I live in a townhouse. Literally every time I ever go drive my car, I descend a flight of stairs. The last thing I do. And I would see the descend tick up as then I went to vehicular and started driving. So really neat file, offering some of that movement artifact stuff. And then I'll pass to Heather.
Thank you. All right, so for health, I'm going to cover, this is all location based. So I tried to specifically focus on the locations, but anything that is new and updated from the DFIR bus that Sarah and I did 5 years ago, I guess that's how long it's been. Also on health, and I had a really good question. You're going to see where it tracks steps or meters. And Jared was just saying that you can see how many steps someone took. Josh Hickman has done a lot of research. We were going to do Android health. It's a giant nightmare. So I would say that's never going to happen as a talk, but we did do enough research, enough to be dangerous with it, where it's hard to tell. And you may have to replicate some things. Infamously dragging bodies. I think Sarah and I were talking, maybe I'll drag her body to update that video. So if you were here 5 years ago and saw that, I dragged a body to try to replicate a murder. I actually hurt my hamstring doing this. I had to have a neighbor. All I had to do was text her and say, hey, will you come over and record me dragging a body? And she said, sure, after my call, no questions asked. So she's a good neighbor to have. That's a good Karen to have in your life where she's like, yeah, whatever you need, I'll record this. So the first one we want to look at is HealthDB Secure SQLite. Many of you have probably heard of this. The tools do a pretty good job parsing it, except when it comes to all locations. But something we found, there is a new, well, there are several new workouts, but one that I was using because I am such a cheater when it comes to competitions is called Mind and Body. So I was flying to Australia. I did a workout for like 4 hours on my flight called Mind and Body because I was resting my mind. So I could beat Joey in a health competition that we were in.
So we started a competition for 7 days, and she was going to be on an airplane for like 2 of those days, and she still beat me.
Mind and Body.
Because she did Mind and Body.
And the best is we're looking at these queries. So we were using the queries from Apollo, and Jared said, I don't know what this one is. I'm like, oh, I bet it's Mind and Body because that's the one I was doing. And it is. You can see Mind and Body's in there. Indoor, outdoor walk. I walked a lot inside of airports. And that's something I was hoping that you could decipher the difference because putting someone outside versus inside could be helpful. Still can't do that, but you can see HIIT training and some other real things, but mine was mostly Mind and Body. So just validate your tools if you're using them to rely upon it. Another thing, periods of activity versus inactivity. So if you look at this chart, and this is one screenshot from a tool, if you look at it, you're like, wow, her heart rate was really spiked. What was she doing? Because her energy level was so low. I was sleeping on an airplane. I was doing Mind and Body at this time. And if you look at it, even though the graph is making it look like it's really exciting, it's not. I think my max heart rate was at 99. Maybe I got up and walked to the restroom. So even though it was really resting energy, this is a good example of Mind and Body. But this could also be a good example if you think someone was attacked or something like maybe you're not exerting any energy, you're tied up and you're terrified and your heart rate spiked. Click on the button and make sure you actually look at the database and see how high those heart rate spikes were. But to get to location. So here we are looking at metadata values and then also the data provenances. And what you're going to find is not everything is going to be represented by tools out there. All the queries that are in this on the final slide, we created a little Evernote that you can get every query we ran for this presentation. So you can just copy and paste them. But something you're going to see is the device and the time zone where I was. So you'll see a lot of America, New York. I did stuff in Los Angeles and Australia, and those things were mapped. However, under data provenances, nothing seems to be really parsing this correctly. And there were some time zones. We were in Israel for a work event. And I remember when we were out, we were in Asia, Jerusalem, but didn't it hit like a cell tower for Istanbul or something? At one point, I was like, what is that? Where are we right now? Are they going to kill us in this desert? We're in the middle of nowhere doing these dune buggy rides. But none of that stuff was actually parsed. And I teach 585. I had a student last week during the forensic challenge. She's like, I want to put this location with this device because cloud sync was enabled. And they wanted to say who did what at a specific time. It can be really important, but it's not a simple thing to do with putting all the things together. So use the queries. They are available to you. If you're sharing health data, so if you have fitness friends, there's going to be these contacts cache.dat files, and you should be able to see the name, the Apple ID, who they're sharing with. Here you can see we threw this protobuf into CyberChef just to replicate this data for you and show you what it looks like, but it can be extremely helpful. You may also be able to track locations where things occurred with people. Some data usage. All right, so Jared talked about the locations, we have the health, and now we want to look at what's actually happening on the device. So you can say that is the device where something happened. Sarah won, how many years ago was your Knowledge C blog of the year? 2, 3 years ago? You remember? The last in person, right? 3 years ago, maybe? Sarah did Knowledge is Power, and she did a lot of research on Knowledge C. Ian Whiffen, who is our coworker, is going to release an entire paper, he believes, on every single Knowledge C artifact and what it means and how it's populated. He is a wild man, and I don't think he sleeps ever. So that hopefully that comes out this year. But everything from how loud you listen to your music, the applications you use, battery usage, what you're searching for in Safari, if you touch your device and it powers on, powers off, all of that is tracked in Knowledge C. So it's crazy not to mention it in this presentation because obviously it matters a lot. So we're going to walk you through some device artifacts at this point, and then we'll finish with a day in the life and what it actually looks like.
Yeah, so Knowledge C itself could be like an 8-hour training session without leaving that single file. We're going to jump over to some Wi-Fi stuff. So there's 2 files here, COM, Apple, Wi-Fi, no networks, plist, and then recent networks, JSON. The one that I have shown to you here is the plist file, and you can see I sort of just grabbed out that top one that's the Fatal free and broke it out and expanded the plist so that you can see some of the values. The reason that I like to mention this is because it gives you 3 touch points for a device's Wi-Fi connection. So you can see the one that says joined by user at. So think of this as the point in time where I actually am manually deciding to select the Wi-Fi network and connect. Many of you probably did that in this hotel here in the last 24 hours or so. So you're sort of creating that record. Then you get a previously joined time. All right, so another time that you have, so not the first time you connected, but a previously joined, and then joined by system at. So the first time I'm manually doing it, the next time I come back, assuming you don't have to deal with like a login type page, the system's going to automatically connect you back to that same Wi-Fi. Again, so it's saying you're here when you chose to connect, and then the system is connecting for you this other time. All right, so just a couple different date and time artifacts that you can probably associate to a place, especially if you're in control of the network in the building or something like that. You can very clearly say you're connecting to this point over here on this side of the building, and that type of investigation. Another file for Wi-Fi is the Wi-Fi network store model.sqlite. This file has been around for, again, many iOS versions, and I just present this to you with a bit of caution. So as you can see here, my house is the one with the lightning bolt on it, the orange lightning bolt. And that little dot is the mapped coordinate that was recorded for that Wi-Fi connection. Across the street at that other townhouse is another dot for that same network, my lightning network, okay? Now, if you were deciding on where a crime occurred, you basically have two different houses, right? My house is actually stacked on top of another house, the townhouse that's the third and fourth floor versus first and second. So this is really neat to get you close, but you would have to do some extra work to be really sure of which door you're allowed to enter if that's the scenario, okay? But the coordinates are pretty good, and the date and time is the last connection time for the device. Interaction C, for this one, just sort of pointing out some of the communication stuff gets mapped in the interaction C.db file. And for this one, it basically caught me airdropping from my test phone to my personal Mac to grab a file out. So you can see a start and end time, and then it kicks over to the bundle that was using it. It's the slideshow. From the slideshow, the target bundle ID was a UI activity airdrop. It was an outgoing, and the recipient of that was my MacBook Pro 4, the name of my MacBook, okay? So again, just an interesting file, just to cover it quickly and move forward.
You can
I'll
just
just
keep
hang on
that
to it,
if you
yeah.
want. All right, so our scenario, we tried to meet at the same point and conduct as many of these things together as possible. So you can see what it looks like when two people who have separate activity are together at the same location. Device movement, including just walking, descending stairs, walking into a bar, getting into vehicles, doing a test drive, posting things on social media even. The health, the device usage, all of the complete picture finally in one place from two different perspectives. Remember, Joey's going to be red and Holly's going to be in pink.
Okay. So yeah, if you think of the scenario as you're not just trying to determine if someone did something, but you're trying to more pair together if two different people did something together. So it's not just saying, yes, I'm very confident about this one, but trying to overlay the activities at least a little bit and put two people at the same place at the same time. So this is a representation of that cache.sqlite file. The query was written to basically say, I want to select all the things from this point in time to this point in time. All right, so it does look pretty that they are at the same, yeah, they were at the same place at the same time. Of course, it's test data. But when you select the exact same period of time between two separate extractions or pieces of data, if it looks like this, it's pretty convincing that there is certainly overlap to where their locations are.
And if you look, go back once, if you look at Holly's data, do you see how mine is a little bit jumped around at that top? This was the first time Holly's device connected to Jared's Wi-Fi, Jared's car. So I feel like it was trying to familiarize, whereas Joey was connected
Right.
several times.
Yeah. Yeah. So up at the top, there's a little bit of, I guess, disparity to her data points compared to mine, which were pretty solid there at the top and the whole way through. Okay. So going to dig into cache encrypted C from this period of time. So you can see at the top there, we have that 17, so I'm on the left with the red, the 17, 13, 24, we start driving. All right. If you look over at the pink, the top 17, 13, 20, also driving. Now, are we in the same car or are we in separate cars? All right, there's still some variables here that would need a little bit more information, a little bit more investigation. All right, but basically this file is saying both of these devices went from not vehicular to vehicular within seconds of each other. All right, at the end of the bottom of those boxes that I put around those, you can see 17, 15, 14 is the last vehicular on the red. And 17, 15, 18 is the last in the pink. So again, within seconds of each other, and then they kick to not vehicular. When you go from vehicular to not, then the box at the bottom is, okay, now that they're not vehicular, are they taking steps? And that's where that picks up. So you can see the 17, 15, 50 for red and 17, 15, 49 for pink. All right, so a total of maybe like 8 or 9 seconds total between driving and step counts that were basically the exact same. Like we were doing the exact same activity, pulling this data from this same file from two different devices. It becomes sort of clear. Now, we're in a car together, and where did we go? All right, so I looked at the Joey device, and you can see that from 401 to 511, all right, we went to this place, and it's the place that I already showed you in that drive from the cache.sqlite file. But then we left there and we went to the next place. And that's the small, tiny piece that we're going to pull apart here. All right. So after we left Bright Meadow Drive, where did we go next? And you can see in the bottom right corner there where it says Kentlands Market Square, my significant locations for my 14.5.1 device was already telling me exactly where we went. Right. So it's just pulling that data out of there. So leaving that place and going to the next, again, running a query against the cache.sqlite file for the exact same period of time using the Mac Absolute epoch, right? I can say, here's this device and here's the second one, and you can obviously see they're going to the same place. We arrive and park at that spot that I have marked parking space, and then interestingly enough, we walk into that bar, but you can see the location points sort of drop off a little bit for the actual bar itself, right? As we're driving and doing things that require that sort of constant refresh of location, great stuff. When we walk in and just sit down, we're now not moving. We're not asking for anything for location, essentially. We have a data point drop off, which is normal. Now that we're in the bar, we're gonna take a look at just the Joey device and try to understand, now that we know exactly where he is, what happened next, right? So now we're gonna look at knowledge C. On the device, what is happening? And again, we're just picking apart tiny little things that happened in these few minutes of time. So here you can see that as I got into the car, before I started that short drive that I just showed you, I placed my phone on the wireless charger in my car. Device is plugged in, okay? So wireless charging is displayed in the knowledge C database. The next thing that I did, and it has a nice little timestamp there, at 17:14:16, I launched the camera. So it says app usage and then app in focus. And you can see there, I can go find a photo that matches up to the date and time. I opened the camera on the device when I arrived at the bar and took a picture. The next thing that you see is com.apple.preferences. Now this one's a little tricky because it simply tells you that I opened the settings on the iPhone. It's not perfectly clear exactly what happened within the settings, and there's a million things that could happen. The preference files, the P list associated with preferences is like a full-time job for a person or two. All right, but in this scenario, I cheated a little bit. When I got into the bar, I opened and connected to Wi-Fi. All right, when I connected to the Wi-Fi, you can see here the actual Wi-Fi network that I connected to from that known networks P list that I showed you before. So it gives you that date and time that I, as the user, chose to connect to that Wi-Fi. All right. The next thing that we have is com.apple.mobile slideshow. All right. We're in the photos, we're looking at pictures, we're doing whatever. And essentially what was happening here is I was going to take a photo and then post it to Instagram. That's what I was purposely doing to generate data, which is what I did. So you can see the transition then from the bundle ID com.bourbon.instagram, app usage, app in focus, and out there is the Joey Blanton's post to Instagram. Now, that was a very quick overview of a lot of things. And again, if you wanted to dig into knowledge C, awesome. I mean, you could spend a ton of time there, and it'll tell you so many things about any device that you would want to know. If your investigation is location-based, hopefully you picked out how awesome that cache.sqlite file can be if you can get it in the time frame that it still retains data. All right. But from what you're seeing here on the screen, we have 1711 to 1730. So about 19 minutes of time looking through one single file. We're able to say all of these different things about that user's activity. All right. So as we break that out a little bit, you can really get granular and be confident in where someone was, what they were up to on the device, their physical movement. And then when you get into the health piece, it really can tell you the world about heart rate, steps, all those things. And again, we breezed over a lot of the health stuff. Didn't get real granular with each step and things like that. Also wearables. So on the Joey phone, there was an Apple Watch that was associated. So the data was more enriched than perhaps someone that didn't have an Apple Watch as well.
If you take knowledge C out of the equation, so we get a lot of cases that come into us at work saying, hey, this is hard, or the tools aren't doing this, help us do this. Without knowledge C, it makes it really, really difficult. And it's interesting when that is stripped away from you for how much we rely upon it. Sadly, the tools that most people use for mobile forensics do an okay job with it, but that okay job doesn't ultimately timeline very well and put that entire picture together. And that's where it's going to require more of you doing these things. And because of that, what we did was we created, and this is my URL shortener, so it's for585.com/DFIR Summit 22. And we can put that in the Slack channel of the hallway. If you go there, every query that we talked about for this specific presentation will be there. Keep in mind, it's only iOS 14 and 15. So as things change with 16, it'll be different if it goes back to 13. Again, we recommend using this Using Apollo, using iLeap, these tools will help you as well with it. And we didn't show Holly's knowledge C breakdown and all of the day because it was really similar. But some things that were interesting in hers, other than the fact that she TikToked the entire car ride, was that I did connect to Jared's car, that his Wi-Fi would have been a brand new connection for me. We both did connect in the bar. I think we tagged each other on Instagram posts. So you would see similar artifacts that would put the two devices together. But if you only have one in your investigation and you're lacking the other, it obviously could be a huge missing part of the puzzle as well. We have this email address here. So locations, it hit several of us who have done location research at Celebrate. So if you have a location question, even if it's not Celebrate related, we don't care. If you're like, hey, I found this file, I'm not even a customer of yours, you can email locations@celebrate.com and it will hit a team of us that will respond to you and help you